Now, the current economic turmoil, of course, has hit hedge funds, well, pretty hard. In recent months, the industry has been dragged down by fund closures, job losses, a fresh wave of forced withdrawals. Will it continue into 2009? Joining us is Stuart Calder, Product Director for Line Data Services. Stuart, good to see you. Can we exaggerate how hard it's been for hedge funds or not?
OK, well, I think it's pretty easy to find lots of negative stories around hedge funds, and the last few months have been probably the most torrid time, frankly, that they've ever faced. As you say, we've seen forced redemptions, we've seen the total assets under management fall from probably around 2 trillion in the summer down to at least 1.5 trillion by the end of this year, possibly a bit more to go there. That's been a combination of market losses and redemptions, and in some cases one has sustained the other. The funds have had to liquidate in order to get cash, which has depressed the assets that they've had to sell, which has spooked the investors even further. So it's been a pretty bad and torrid time. However, I think there are some bright spots on the horizon. Firstly, not every single strategy is in negative territory. There's a few have been having actually quite a good year. The managed futures, for example, short bias, I think, as you perhaps would expect, has done reasonably well, and some of the global macro funds are returning quite respectably. And even those who've lost money have still outperformed the underlying markets. Now, obviously, it doesn't help the managers who are not making their performance fees, but I think to call the end of hedge funds at this time is
well,
very
I suppose it's George Soros, isn't it, came out and said, look, we're going to cut the number of hedge funds by 60%. There's only going to be a third of them left.
Well, that's at the more extreme end of the predictions. I mean, far be it for me to contradict one of the pioneers of the industry, but I think other commentators are seeing it perhaps less extreme than that. I think possibly we might go back closer to a trillion. At the moment, we're back to where we were in around about 2006, and we've had, frankly, a pretty amazing boom in hedge funds since that time, with huge increases. Started to slow in the early part of this year, and now, of course, has gone into reverse. But
I mean, one of the focuses, of course, is going to be a bit like the private equity industry for a few years. In the last part of the growth, a lot of critics would have said it was just a multiplier effect, right? They got a lot of cheap money, and they were able to just, multiply that up, make big returns because the markets are going up anyway.
Yeah.
It was an easy game. So in a sense, is this, I mean, people, you could view it and say, look, this is going to be good because we're going to actually find out who really knows how to manage a fund.
Absolutely. I mean, a number of people I've spoken to have said actually it's a long overdue shakeout, that there were some people there probably just for the ride that perhaps didn't deserve to be there. And the result of this will clearly be a leaner and fitter industry. Clearly the industry is going to be under big pressures in terms of cost next year. We're hearing of pressure on their charging models for performance fees. They probably won't be able to charge the 2% management and 20% on the performance that they've been used to.
How do you think it will change in that sense?
Well, we've already seen funds announcing reduced management fees just as part of their sort of lock-in agreements with investors. So I think there'll be pressure there. Possibly the hurdle rate structure might change a little bit as well. So I think the managers are going to have to get used, at least for a while, to lower revenues.
Will sort of complex derivatives stay? How much more will they have to insure against things like counterparty risk and what sort of technology? What sort of changes is it going to be fundamental for managers who are going to stick around to do?
Okay, well, counterparty risk is probably at the top of just about everybody's list. I've been travelling around recently visiting clients in Asia and the US, and also talking to prime brokers. The brokers have all been opening up extra accounts for hedge funds who are diversifying the counterparty risk, and that creates some technical challenges because they need to view the portfolio not just from a market exposure perspective, but also to see where their exposure is to those prime brokers. And I think the fact that Lehman actually was allowed to go under has completely underlined the fact that that no one is safe. They do need to diversify. So there's definitely some technology challenges around there, and that's one of the areas that we specialise in. And you mentioned derivatives as well. There was talk of heavy regulation on, for example, the credit default market. That seems to have eased a bit. At one point, the US were talking about regulating them as insurance products. I think that's gone away. I think we will see a centralised clearing system for credit default swaps. I doubt rather that we would see exchange trading of credit default swaps, because I think investors still want the flexibility of the customised terms to suit their own needs from an investment point of view.
Stuart, good to talk to you. Well, I'm sure we'll be fascinated to see what happens as we go through 2009. Stuart Calder, Product Director for Europe at Line Data Services.